Singapore is a tropical and modern island country located south of Malaysia. It holds a population of about 5.64 million people, of which the ethnic groups include Malaysian, Chinese, Indian, and varying others. The major languages spoken in Singapore are English, Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil. Many people generally are bilingual and can speak English and one of these other languages. Economically, Singapore is healthy and flourishing. It produced a GDP of $589.18 billion, which ranks them 36th in the world, and a GDP per capita of $103,717, which places them second in the world. Singapore's economy is a free market economy, 89% free to be explicit. It advocates policies and practices of a free market economy, but there is still an inkling of government intervention. Singapore's government can be described as unitary, whereby the central government has an overarching degree of control, but also the government has parliamentary and constitutional qualities, as members are chosen in a representative democratic fashion, and they are all governed by a constitution. In terms of the people, Singapore's development and economic welfare, as measured by the Human Development Index, or HDI, is at 0.932, which is very high compared to the world and places them ninth. And the distribution of wealth in the economy, as recorded by the GNI, is 0.459, which is mediumly proportionate, and it is pretty common again among the top performing countries in the world. In comparison, Australia is a dynamic and vibrant nation, much larger than Singapore, and located approximately southeast of Singapore. It is home to a population of about 25.5 million people. The population is highly diverse, comprised of a number of different ethnicities, but generally the central language spoken is English. Economically, Australia is healthy and prosperous, producing $1.5 trillion in GDP, ranking at 13th in the world, and $59,000 in GDP per capita, ranking at 10th. Australia operates as a free market economy, 80.9% free to be candid, and we run by a system of representative democracy whereby we vote on who makes up the government, and we are too bound by a constitution. Australia's HDI is recorded at 0.93, again very high, and places them third in the world. Income distribution is at 0.33, which is a little bit better than medium, so the wealth is shared a little bit better among the rich and the poor than in Singapore. Globalization is essentially the interaction and integration of individuals, companies, and governments between countries around the world. Howard, McGrew, Goldblatt, and Perrotin say that globalization is the widening, deepening, and speeding up of worldwide interconnectedness in all aspects of contemporary social life. The concept is said to have emerged in the late 1990s, following of rapid changes to the structure of the world. However, globalization is not a new concept. In fact, it has existed for many years, even before the 90s, where it is evidenced in the European colonization, for example. Globalization can be both advantageous and disadvantageous. Now let's explore this further.
This video will explain the impacts of globalization. The evidence of globalization is everywhere, but it is important to recognize that not everyone is in favor of it. Some groups argue that TNCs are responsible for many of the world's environmental problems. These problems include global warming, the depletion of natural resources, and the production of harmful chemicals. Some groups also claim that TNCs take advantage of developing countries by polluting industries within their borders, logging their tropical forests, and exploiting their labor. Other concerns include the loss of local culture, the tendency for developed countries to interfere in the affairs of developing countries, and the reduced power of governments to control economic activity. However, there are people who support globalization and suggest it benefits individuals and the global community. Supporters of globalization claim that it results in faster economic growth, quicker access to new technology, cheaper imports, and greater competition. Supporters of globalization also argue that globalization will make the world economy more efficient and will continue to create hundreds of millions of jobs, mainly in developing countries. Thank you for watching Adumacate.
From the video, it is clear to see that globalization can spark mixed opinion on whether it is a good or bad idea due to the varying advantages and disadvantages it can yield for the countries involved. Positively, globalization can enhance technological innovation through shared information between countries. It can improve living standards among the population. It can provide a wider variety of goods and services available to the population and create job opportunities. However, negatively, it can cause a potential job loss. It can cause the possibility for companies to be shut down. It can cause an inequitable distribution of income. It can be a factor in environmental degradation, and globalization can also develop cultural imperialism between countries. We can now explore how globalization has influenced Singapore. Globalization has allowed Singapore to continuously raise its productivity over the years through trade and changes to its industrial structure. Singapore successfully sought and received foreign technology and investment through shared information and funds, and this catapulted product development and economic growth in Singapore. Their land area is quite small, and the resources are limited or hard to come by, so they have had to seek methods to overcome this issue. Globalization has helped resolve the problems through, for example, importing of resources for production, and thereby it has helped Singapore achieve these increased levels of production and growth. Singapore has made a name for itself as a strong and reliable trade partner, as well as a viable destination to conduct business. They have been able to attract high levels of foreign investment, which allows them to focus on enhancing its own industries, resources, infrastructure, and living conditions. On the other hand, Singapore is a diversified and developed country. After globalization, it attracted people and business from all over the world, and in the long run, this means that competition will be more intense, and local people and companies may lose job opportunities, and this can put a huge burden on them. Due to the rapid growth of globalization, more and more new concepts and products are being introduced into Singapore, and these require people's acceptance. This can therefore alter societal values and ideas and issue challenges for culture. Additionally, increased productivity in trade and increases to the population as a result of globalization can take a toll on the environment as well as the depletion of resources. Overall, we found that Singapore is a winner as a result of globalization. Due to globalization, the amount of skilled labour has increased. Singapore has reached a productive efficiency due to increases in the skilled labour and resources that they have available. They have enhanced the amount of technology available. They have created diversity in society, more so than what there already has been. And they have attracted foreign investment, which can be used to increase infrastructure and living standards in Singapore. To measure economic development in Singapore, we can use Gross National Income, or GNI. GNI is basically the total amount of money earned by people and businesses in a country. It is used to monitor and evaluate a nation's wealth from year to year, and it can provide us with an insight as to how the wealth is distributed among the population. To measure economic development in Singapore, we're going to use Gross National Income per capita, so that is per person. Gross national income is regarded as a yardstick for the economic activity of a country. However, it can be misleading since it doesn't consider differences in the cost of living between countries. GNI per capita in Singapore as of 2018 is recorded at $58,770. When compared to previous years, you can see that it has grown. And although growth has fluctuated, it does indicate positive economic development. This is due to a number of factors, namely increased income into the country per person and per business. Another measure for economic development in Singapore is purchasing power parity, or PPP. This is an adjustment of the GNI, which then allows us to compare economic productivity and the standards of living between countries. The base for the adjustment to convert GNI to PPP is the cost of living in the US. PPP for different countries is measured depending on whether the cost of living is higher or lower than the US, and this will explain to us the economic productivity and the standards of living in each country. In a dollar figure, Singapore's PPP per capita is $90,000 at 91 US. Again, you can see that there has been positive growth over the years in PPP per capita, and this indicates good economic development in Singapore. Additionally, the Corruption Perception Index, or CPI, is a system where countries are ranked according to their perceived levels of public sector corruption. In 2018, Singapore ranked in equal third with a score of 85 out of 100, thus making it a viable option for safer business practices essentially. The Democracy Index, or DI, is a system which evaluates and ranks countries' level of democracy. In 2018, Singapore was ranked 66th in the world out of 167 countries, showing that while there is a system of democracy, there is still a degree of political participation. Human development refers to the freedom, quality of life, monetary component and satisfaction individuals experience in an economy. To understand the level of human development a country has, we can use the Human Development Index, or HDI. The HDI is a system created by the UN to evaluate the amount of human development a country exhibits. The HDI looks at factors such as average annual income and education and life expectancy, and ranks and compares them among countries. The HDI arguably may not provide a reliable measure of quality of life or of an economic standard of living. However, the index does still make it possible to monitor and evaluate human development across countries. Singapore has recorded 0.932 on the HDI. This is a very high reading which places them 9th in the world. This reading indicates good levels of education, income, and long life expectancy among the population of Singapore. Singapore's level of the HDI has positively increased each period over the years, and it makes an example of how the components education, income, and life expectancy have too increased. This can be a result of globalization through shared information, which can benefit education and productivity, and therefore income. While critics say that the HDI doesn't fully explain human development, we can look at other factors of improvement that prove Singapore's positive human development. For example, public transport has improved, infrastructure projects have improved, the city is kept clean and well maintained, and the government has made routine a central aspect in the city so that convenience is there for the people. So generally, these factors and many more all go toward improving the standard of life and the satisfaction that people feel in the city that they live in, thus improving human development.
Here's a city that's unlike any other in Asia Pacific. It's shortly after daybreak, and there's still hardly anybody walking around in the streets, apart apart from those who are scheduled to be here. This place runs to time and to a routine.
Okay.
Singapore is about to have another of its well-scrubbed, well-planned, and well-disciplined days. There's a long list of things that make Singapore unique in Asia Pacific. A huge percentage of people come to work by public transport. You can go anywhere at any time of the day and arrive on time. The train network was planned and built before the city expanded. Air conditioning cools the trains and the buses. Swift, punctual, spotless, and arty. They never get stuck in jams because huge government taxes mean it costs a fortune to buy and run a car. The city centre is a restricted zone. It costs money every time a car crosses the line. The fee is charged by infrared beam straight to a smart card in the vehicle. Very Singapore. This place runs according to plans and rules. Chewing gum in the street is a finable offence. So is crossing the road after the countdown is finished. Crime levels are low because punishments are severe. No food on public transport. Litter, £1,000. And the bureaucracy in every walk of life, massive.
Both economic development and human development are important measures to the success of an Australian firm entering Singapore. Human development is important because the population are to be well looked after, and in this case, they can give back to their economy in terms of labour and through the spending of disposable income. However, we find that economic development is of greater significance to an Australian firm entering Singapore. Economic development is concerned with the monetary side and health of the economy, for example, the income, corruption, and government participation, etc. It is important that there is a positive economic development system if the Australian firm were to warrant the decision to establish a presence in Singapore, as it can have a greater effect on that business's outcome than human development would. Culture refers to a system of values and norms that are shared among a group of people and that when taken together constitute a design for living. The elements of culture include religion, social structure, political philosophy, language, education, economic philosophy. These elements all have implications that can affect a business. The social structure element to the culture of Singapore shows that there are a very diverse population in that there are many ethnic groups. However, there is no emphasis on group or individual orientation in society. The city is 24 hours and it is very engaging. There is always something for everyone to do. And the language aspect of the culture in Singapore shows that there is a pool of languages spoken in Singapore. However, the most common is English, so communication between countries is not necessarily an issue. The religion aspect of the culture in Singapore shows that there are multiple religions practiced in this country. Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Muslim and Hinduism, for example, are all practiced, and that the population of Singapore is for the most part accepting of all people's beliefs. The education aspect of the culture in Singapore shows that education is of a high standard and quality, and that they follow a pretty similar schooling method than we do. They go preschool, primary school, secondary school, and then university. As the years have gone on, more individuals are investing in education and studying for a longer period of time. Geert Hofstadter defines cultural distance as the collective programming of the mind, distinguishing the members of one group or category of people from another. His cultural dimension theory is a framework for cross-cultural communication, and it describes the effect of a society's culture on the values of its members and how these values relate to behavior, using a structure derived from factor analysis. He has 6 factors in this theory, and these are: number 1, power distance, the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. The second is uncertainty avoidance. This refers to the extent to which the members of a culture feel threatened by ambiguous or unknown situations and have created beliefs and institutions that try to avoid these situations. The third is individualism or collectivism, and this refers to the degree of interdependence a society maintains among its members. The fourth is masculinity and femininity. The fundamental issue here is what motivates people, and this refers to the masculinity side, which is wanting to be the best, or the feminine side of liking what you do. The fifth factor is the long-term, short-term orientation. This refers to how every society has to maintain some links with its own past while dealing with the challenges of the present and future. And the sixth factor is indulgence and restraint, and this refers to the extent to which people try to control their desires and their impulses. We can use Hofstadter's cultural dimensions theory to analyse the difference in the culture between Singapore and that of Australia. If we look at the first factor, power distance, Singapore scores higher than Australia. This could mean that the individuals in Singapore are more able to understand and accept that power is distributed unequally both in society and in work at an organisation. Looking at the individualism factor, Australia trumps Singapore, and this could mean that Australia has a higher individualist culture, so individuals are more independent and are able to do things on their own. Looking into the third factor of this theory, Australia scored more of a masculine culture than that of Singapore. This could mean that the softer, more feminine regarded aspects of culture, such as levelling with others, consensus, having sympathy for the underdog, and being valued and encouraged, are more likely to be exhibited in Singapore. Australia scores higher on the uncertainty avoidance factor. This could be interpreted to mean that in a situation where the processes or outcome is unknown, Australians are more likely to go into that situation and even possibly more likely to succeed in that situation than those of Singapore. Singapore scores higher on the long-term, short-term orientation factor, and this could mean that people in Singapore are more able to deal with the challenges of the present and the future by maintaining links to their past. And finally, Australia scores higher in the last factor, exhibiting that we potentially have a more reserved culture in that we are more able to control our desires and impulses. David Ricardo, a popular British economist, argues that countries should specialise in the production of the goods they produce most efficiently, and that they should buy goods that they produce less efficiently from other countries. Even if the goods they import are already made efficiently in their own country, they should still look to bring them in from somewhere else if they don't have the comparative advantage to produce them. The manufacturing sector is Singapore's largest and accounts for 20 to 25% of their annual GDP. The industries that are prominent in this sector include electronics, plastics, chemicals, and medical equipment. Singapore should specialise in these manufacturing industries because they have the competitive advantage to produce these, are a strong trade partner with other countries, and can export easily, and also because it contributes so much to their economy. Australia's largest industry is the service industry, but we also have a booming mining industry. The service industry makes up for around 70% of our GDP. It includes tourism, media and entertainment, healthcare, logistics, education and finance sectors. The mining industry, on the other hand, provides both Australia and the rest of the world with valuable resources such as iron ore, coal and natural gases, providing for 37.7% of exports. While the mining industry is prosperous, the service industry is more dominant in the economy and also provides more in return for the economy, being the employer of 79% of the labour force in Australia and also by providing essential services to our own population. Additionally, it is much less efficient to provide for the mining industry because a lot goes into the production and abstracting of resources for other countries and for our own use. So the mining industry is less efficient and therefore the service industry should be the one that Australia specialises in.